In the QA group here at Delphix, and just wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about how we're doing system testing here at Delphix, and two projects in particular. First project is the revival of the ZFS test suite, which was open sourced by Sun in '09 and then pretty much never touched again. And the other is a generic framework for running unit tests from, for operating system unit tests. We use ZFS test here at Delphix pretty regularly to basically flesh out new issues and prevent regressions in the code base. And what we'd like to see is for that to be given back to the community so that other distributions who are downstream from illumos could benefit from these tests and just generally improve the code quality of ZFS. For those who aren't familiar with it, the ZFS test suite is a suite of about 1,000 regression tests. It's run by the Solaris test framework, which back in Sun was responsible for a good number of the automated regression tests that would run in PIT. Let's see, what do I want to say next? As I said, it was open sourced quite a while ago and then never touched. And as a consequence of that, when we thought it out to run it through its paces again, it was pretty broken. It had about 200 failures, and we've been working to sort of get it back on track and get it working again, and we're down to about 60 failures.
How many of those were legit, out of curiosity?
Come again?
How many of those were legit, where the test was too brittle and it broken versus ZFS had actually regressed?
It was very few ZFS regressions.
Right, mostly brittle testing.
Mostly brittle testing.
Yeah,
although
but not zero.
Right.
Yeah, it did find like some of the memory leaks and things that I'm going to push back into illumos. Those were actually uncovered when we were running the ZFS test suite. So
Nice.
Some of the unallow and allow stuff.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. The removal of PyZFS broke
stuff, right? Cool.
Sorry.
And out of curiosity, is anybody else using the ZFS test suite?
No, I was going to say, we've actually had occasion to use some other things from Sun to the FTC, though, so I was curious, we should get a gate of that somewhere up that we can collaborate in.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've got it up on GitHub right now under the Delphix account.
Sweet.
There's also a wiki that explains all of the current known failures, and either whether they're undiagnosed or what the current state of them is. So the GitHub repository has the STC framework, it has the ZFS test suite, and it has 2 support packages for checking the environment and allowing users to run with privilege, arbitrary privilege for tests that require that sort of thing. What other tests are you?
Actually, I forget right now, in 2 years, I don't really.
Fair enough.
DRV is one that some of us have fortunately had to deal with.
Yeah, wasn't that one I was thinking of? There was another.
We have one for SIFs, I think, but there's so anybody ever wants somebody wants to torture themselves, try using NickDRV. I'd love to see that one get regressed. NickDRV, it's the Nick test suite. It's brittle is a good description.
So our ultimate goal here for the ZFS suite is to integrate it into the Delphix OS gate, and from there into illumos. And that'll have a bunch of beneficial properties. For like I said before, it'll allow us to share this testing burden through the community and allow us to just improve on the quality of the code base. It'll eliminate a lot of the junk, frankly, that's in the ZFS test suite right now, because right now you'll see a lot of instances where because you couldn't always rely on the OS bits and the test bits being from the same gate, you'd have to do things like type ZFS allow and parse through the error output and check to see whether or not allow exists in this version of ZFS yet. When your bits and the test bits live together, that's really not an issue. it also will help us eliminate baseline bugs, like the place where bugs go to languish forever and not really get resolved. Just because when you have it automated and you can run it every night, it's easy to address those and not have them sit around.
I would just say I think that this should just be generally a point of principle. I think it's great that you're doing that for all those reasons. I think that there was too much stratification in the past between test suite and code repository, and I think that they should always live side by side. So I think that one way that people can contribute to illumos is by adding tests and going into these domains. Go into a domain that you're using that you need a test suite for, add a test suite for it, make it lightweight, and push it.
Better yet, you hit a bug.
And John, is that a good segue into what you're talking about next?
It is.
So what happens, I'm curious, what happens to Z-test, if anything?
I find them to be complementary. I don't think that necessarily one has to replace the other.
And Chris is going to be talking about Z-test in just like 20 minutes, if you can hold on.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So people who want to contribute to make changes to the ZFS test suite, feel free to take a clone of that repository. It would be great to use the ZFS list on illumos to discuss that, like, I'd like to tackle these tests and see if I can fix them. They're small, they're easy. You could also email me individually. My email is john.kennedy@Delphix, so I'm happy to help out anybody who wants to take a swing at that. Now for the second project that I discussed, this is something that we haven't implemented yet. It's more or less still in the design phase, so I'd be very interested in getting feedback from anybody who is interested in running and sort of depositing series of unit tests in the kernel, in the OS. The idea for the framework is that we have something very simple that's just responsible for running tests and logging the output, and you can feed it like a list of files and directories, and it'll interpret those as tests to be run or directories to go look for tests that you'll run from those directories. And okay. And basically to run all the tests and produce a README that says, here are the tests that you asked for, pass, fail, and for everything that fails, we have a directory where standard out, standard error are logged.
Can you run these not just root globally, but for example per zone, because certain features instantiate per zone and may require a run inside a zone that's different from inside the global zone, for example?
No reason we couldn't implement that.
Okay.
And
in the past, some of the old STC tests needed tweaking to be able to run inside a zone.
right, and ZFS test actually does provide options to run within a zone. I suspect it's pretty broken.
I suppose it would be good when you're putting this project together to clarify some of your goals, because I'm sitting here thinking about, so at Sun there was of course several different test suites, right? Sun VTS, the STC's test suite that you're talking about now. There was a whole other one used for hardware verification, right? And then because they had different goals, they were designed very differently. So, from Illumos's perspective, personally, I'm interested in a test suite to validate the operating system is not buggy, right? But I think that there's probably validity in other kinds of testing as well.
I have a question for you about your unit test framework. I guess it's the same. I guess it's also about goals, but one sort of big question is what boundary you put around the scope of functionality you hope to achieve with it. So some STC, for example, deals with cases where you have two-party tests where you remote shell to another machine and so forth. And that's part of both bad and good about it. It's pretty ugly how it does it, but it does let you do a multi-machine test. Would you include that in scope or not? For
my thinking to date would be no, because the idea is that these would be like a repository for unit tests that are small and they can run fast and they don't require a lot of configuration.
And the reason for this is we want developers to run them, right? So when the tests are simple, when the tests run quickly, when they are expected to succeed and don't require a bunch of external factors, we will all run them every day before we check in.
So-
and we know that if we see any failures, that's a bug in our code, that's a bug in the
The
code.
model is dtest/AK test/ the
Exactly. So a number of test suites which have preceded it, and this thinking has grown out of the unit tests that we've been running at writing at Delphix for the different bugs we've been fixing in illumos. We haven't had a good place to stick them. We've been kind of checking them into our OS gate, just so they don't live in our home directories. But I'm sure that, show of hands, everyone who has a unit test in their home directory for some bug they fixed. That never got checked in, and it's, I know this is all of us, except for Brian apparently.
It's dtest, man. It's all there.
He's ever done his D-trace.
Right, with the ahi and mahi in it. System tap and Larry.
Whole DMC tap.
Exactly.
We have Z-test, right? Is D-test
Yes.
You
Yes.
dtest fucking embedded is.
Yes.
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 I
Yeah.
don't have no D-trace, so. And nobody throw any rotten tomatoes at me, but I think even the corn chill stuff has a bunch of tests. So.
I only care if
Drink.
it's page 93. Okay, sure.
So there are examples in tree. It'd be nice to have a kind of, I guess, a unified approach to this, because it's been very ad hoc.
Yep.
Yeah, the way I see it working is more or less like there's a package for the framework, and then there are packages that represent subsystems, like a particular NIC or whatever.
We'll grow this on an ad hoc basis. At first, kind of, it'll be a grab bag of unit tests that test a variety of things. Then, as one particular subsystem becomes too onerous to test all the time, we'll break that out into its own test suite that runs in the same framework, that follows the same model, but maybe you don't execute those tests.
So the conversation that actually is, the reason this is particularly interesting and relevant recently is we have this new lock manager code for the interface lock manager, right? And there's questions about, well, we want to be able to integrate some kind of test suite. And the questions have really been, what kinds of advice can be given to the developers who are working on this about where and how to integrate this, and to what standards, if any, this stuff has got to conform. So I would love to just have, I don't know, a blueprint or a template that to guide people, so that I think we get a lot more test code that come out that way, rather than kind of the ad hoc. Well, I don't know, just put something somewhere, which is the answer they get today.
That's the need we're seeking to address here, and we look to see more information from John on the illumos discussion list on both the ZFS test suite as he gets it out the door and checked into the illumos gate, and on this unit testing framework that he's talking about, and soliciting input on that.
Because I've already got some ideas for just listening to the last 10 minutes.
Well, so Jared
That's
reminded
excellent.
me that was the one we were going to SDC for, NFS tests, which are in there for the lock manager stuff.
John, I love the model, by the way, pushing to the Delphix gate first, and let people kind of look at what you've done there, and do whatever's lightweight for you, and then other people can take a look and pull as appropriate.
So please take a clone and let me know what you think.
Cool.
And that's all I have.